Do you like drinking orange juice?
Today, we're going to introduce you to the guy who started Tropicana. Hello, and welcome to Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa, and it is week 75.
Well,
Wow.
that's a lot of episodes.
It is Alyssa's last chance, at least for now, to tell you about Guam. I'm sure someday we'll do it again. So what do you have for us today?
Some more hikes.
Well, that's fine.
So I have a couple more hikes that I really like to do, and I found this picture and was like, oh, this is kind of a fun one. When there was a coconut tree that was actually the right height that I could kind of climb it, because I couldn't climb straight up the edge of a coconut tree. This one was kind of tipped over. So I have, our first hike was like kind of more like a little walk, and then it had pools at the end of it, and they call them priest's pools. So you walk through all this nice tall grass, big open spaces, and then there's an area where the water just can kind of travel downhill. So it's got like 6 or 7 of these little pools of water that you can get into. I think I would only do it as long as the water looks like it's running a lot and not just like sitting there. It was kind of dry, but when it's really, really running, you're supposed to be able to like slide down this like a water slide.
Whoa.
But it was mostly dry, and so Stefan could sit there and like block up all the water because it was pretty dry already. One of my favorite hikes in all of Guam is to Segua Bay, and that is what the next few pictures will be about. And this one you hike down and you hike over this really cool old Spanish bridge. Oh.
What's your favorite one?
My favorite hike is Segua Bay. So you hike down through the jungle and over a bunch of hills and stuff, and then you get to this old Spanish bridge, and I'll show you at the end. And then you get to walk down the beach and just look at all the different pretty pieces of coral and coconut trees. I just love seeing all the designs in the coral. It just looks so cool, like all those little designs and lines and curves and everything, just amazing. So this is like from the farther end of the beach looking back. So this is the bay area, and you can go swimming in here. You have to get out a little bit because it's pretty corally on the edges. But I have seen blacktip reef sharks out here. You could see them swimming out a little farther, and octopus and sea cucumbers and all the classics. But there's a lot of empty coconuts on this beach because there aren't too many people. Like, you have to hike a ways to get down there. And this coconut was a home for all sorts of cute little crabs. It was funny because we saw it from a distance, and then I got up close and there were all of these crabs all over it. They're really cute. There are a lot of crabs on this beach. They're like these bigger, like hermit style crabs, I think. And then some of those smaller ones too. But they're really cute. And lots of coconut trees. And coconuts sprouting new coconut trees. So you can see them like from the base of the tree and when they're just starting to grow. This hike also has a really cool tree, this coconut tree that grew sideways and then grew up, which is really kind of funny. So it's like the perfect little bench. You can sit on it for a nice picture. Cheese. And here is that old Spanish bridge. This is a dry time of year. And also, I didn't mention it in the pictures back earlier when you're looking back, like here, all those hills are brown in the distance, and they usually are green, but somebody had set fire to them and it had all burned up like within the last couple of weeks before we went out. And actually, when we were hiking this, there were still like some smoldering spots of where it was still burned. But since this is all right next to the water, it didn't catch fire and burn quite as much. But this is the bridge built by the Spanish back so many years ago when they were on Guam. And this is what it looks like to walk over the bridge. Personally, I don't like walking over it because it's full of spiders. But the rocks and like all the greenery and all that is still kind of cool. And then I have a couple more pictures of another hike. I think probably the last hike I went on Guam that we went on together.
The first time you went on this one, right?
Yes. This is a tough hike. This was the hike to Segua Falls, and it's considered a hard hike, and it's a lot of open hiking. There's like nothing around in this red dirt, and right in the middle there's a nice tank. Got left over from World War II, and it's just kind of rusting out there in the middle of the field, in the middle of nowhere. But you hike for a really long time, and then when you get to like the top of the area where you have to start like descending to get down, then there's like all these little ropes you have to hang on to, and it is a little like, it's a little bit scary. You want to hang on pretty tight. And then you get to the bottom and you get this beautiful view, the waterfall and water. There's another upper falls, but to get there you have to like climb up and around this waterfall to get to the next one. So it's a lot more challenging to get to that one. But it is a really pretty hike called Segua Falls. You should probably work up to it though, because it's hot. You're out in the sun.
Yeah, it was bad.
Very, very, very hot. There is not much shade on the whole trail. But there is water to get in at the end, which is nice, but then you're going to be all hot and sticky and wet and sweaty on your way back. So you have to decide if it's worth the trade-off.
Yep.
But it is really pretty. There are lots of hikes on Guam, even more than that. And so there aren't tons and tons of things to do, but hiking is a great one. So if you get good weather, you should just be hiking with somebody who knows the area. Like, that's also why I didn't go on this trail, is because you need to go with somebody who knows the hike.
Because it's so wide open that
you could get lost.
If you get off the trail, you wouldn't really know it.
And it's really hot. There's not good phone service, so you could get lost and it would not be a good thing. It could be kind of dangerous. They're always going out to rescue people on hikes and stuff. So you do want to be safe when you're hiking. Lots of fun things to see, but make sure you're with the right people and you have the right amount of water and stuff for it too. Okay, I have some more about Tony today.
Okay.
Oops, that's not my story. Here's my story. Okay. So, Tony did go to Florida, and he started up his first thing, which was a tomato farm. So he farmed lots of tomatoes, and he prayed, and every decision he made now, he would talk to God about. And he would ask God for different things, or he would ask God to help him make wise decisions, because he read in the Bible that God will answer and help you with wisdom if there are things that you need help with. And so he prayed his first year for his tomato crop. He prayed and asked God that God would help him have a $5,000, like that's how much his earnings would be. And so he prayed and asked God for that. And it looked like when he was getting into the season that he was going to have way more than $5,000. His plants were doing really great. Everything looked really good. But then as it got time to do harvest, he didn't have enough people to pick his tomatoes. And so they were like out rotting on the ground, and he was really disappointed. Like, I can't even get enough people to help me. All the other farmers in the area have all the workers, and I don't even have enough to take care of all these tomatoes that I have. And he was disappointed. He thought maybe he wasn't really going to make $5,000 like he had asked God to help him. But when the time came for them to count up all the money from the sales, that is exactly what he made, $5,000. And Florence, his wife, said, "Look, just like you asked God for." And he said, "Perfect. See, God did answer." But like the typical little rascal, the Brabante that he was, thought maybe I should have asked him for $10,000, and then I wouldn't have lost all those tomatoes. And as he was walking around in the neighborhood, guess what he saw? A restaurant for sale. And he thought, oh, maybe I should do a restaurant again. He really loved working in the restaurant business. So he talked to his lawyers, and once again, he got into the restaurant business, and he was really good at it. He worked really hard. He made a lot of good decisions for his restaurant, and God helped him be really successful. As he was doing his business, he also thought about how popular oranges and orange juice had been at his supermarket and his restaurant back in New York City. But he remembered it was really hard to get, and it would get really expensive. And so he started thinking about it and looking around, and he decided he wanted to start up his own orange business. So he would shop around to different orange orchards, and he would buy the oranges, and then he came up with a new plan how to ship them. Because originally people would like put them in ice in a refrigerated truck and then ship them to wherever they wanted them to go. And the problem was they wouldn't stay good. They would go bad, and then the whole process was like ruined. So he thought about it, and he came up with a plan where they would put all the oranges and all the fresh squeezed juice into a truck, and then they would blow ice chips all around everything and cover it with a tarp. And then it would make it to its destination at the perfect temperature. And so he began to sell his oranges and orange juice to restaurants and places in New York City. And his business was doing really, really great. And he had lots of workers who were working for him. He had dozens of trucks going up and down the coast delivering orange juice and oranges to all these different places. And his new business, Tropicana, was going really, really great. But in the midst of all of this, his wife Florence got really sick, and she had a heart problem that they didn't realize, and they took her to the hospital, and she had a heart attack, and there was nothing else the doctors could do, and she died. And that was a very sad thing for Tony. He and his wife had been teammates. They had been working together, and he loved her so much. So he turned and he spent a lot more time with people from his church and from his neighborhood, and they had a lot of time to spend reading the Bible together. And sometimes his friends would suggest, like, maybe we should read something else. And Tony said, no, God has changed all of my life, and he has helped me make so many much better decisions, and this is the book that we need to read. Do you remember how I learned about God? From reading this book in the library. And he began to think about how he could use his business to help people and to help God, the people of God, even more. So he decided he wanted to donate a lot of his income that he got from Tropicana to missionaries. So he began to support lots and lots of missionaries. And then he thought about how he needed to share the good news of the gospel with his family back in Italy. So he got on a plane and he took that long trip from Florida all the way back to Italy, and he prayed about all the different ways he could tell them and share with his family the good news of the gospel. And he did. Many times over, he told his family members while he was there about how God loved them, how God had a plan for them, how Jesus had come and died on the cross and rose again. And again, he shared with his family members, but he didn't know exactly what they thought because they wouldn't always understand, they wouldn't always respond to him, and so he just didn't know. He prayed for dinner one night, not too soon, not before he was going to head back to Florida, and he prayed, and he finished his prayer, and he said, "In the name of Jesus, I pray, amen." And when he finished praying, his father looked at him and he said, "You know, son, I've been listening to the things you've said, and from now on, I too will believe and pray in the name of Jesus." And that made Tony really happy to hear his dad talk like that. Well, Tony went back to Florida to keep working on his business, and his business was doing great even though he wasn't there. And soon it grew to where he had 800 workers in his business, and they had just built a new building for the business, and they were very excited. So to celebrate, they were going to have a big party, and they had lights and decorations and food and all sorts of fun stuff happening, and they were all inside the building and enjoying themselves, but they didn't realize that the roof had been made of this tar, and the sun was too hot on the tar, and it was starting to heat up, and it was heating up so much it was catching fire. So by the time the people were leaving the party, the roof of the building was on fire, and they tried everything they could, and the fire department got there, but sadly, the whole building went up in flames just as they had been there to celebrate it. The firefighters said, "We're so sorry. We did everything we could do, Mr. Rossi, and we're so sorry that your building is just gone." But Tony knew, God will still work this out. I'm sure God will have a good plan for this. And even that night as he went home, he thought, what could I do? How can I speed up the process to get the fruit from Florida up the coast faster? So his next big dream was to have a boat, the Tropicana. And he thought, if I have this boat, I'll be able to load it up and it will be able to deliver lots of oranges and orange juice up and down the coast. And guess what it did? God blessed him. Within 3 years. He had a nice, big, beautiful ship to deliver his fruits. And during this time, a lot of people heard Tony talk about how he wanted to get married again, but he wanted to marry a missionary. And God brought just the right missionary into his path. About 8 years after his wife died, he met Santa Barlow, who was a missionary in South Africa, and they met. They talked, they met up in London and got married, and then she came back with him to Florida to be part of his ministry at Tropicana. And as they were working together, they decided they wanted to take some time every year to do a little vacation in Italy, back where he was from, And they turned their vacation into Bible study time, and the Bible study into a Bible conference that had like 200 people every single year. So they would go spend their vacation leading and sponsoring this conference for people to be able to learn more about God each and every year. And sometimes when he was gone, stuff would happen back at his orchard factory. One year, all the oranges seemed to be freezing. There was a really hard freeze, and the people said, "This is terrible. We're going to have to get our oranges all the way from Brazil. They're all just going to have to squeeze the orange juice all ready for us, and we're going to have to ship it like that." And Anthony said, "Never. I'm not going to sell old squeezed orange juice. It's got to be fresh. So we're going to get it from Mexico instead." So that was his new plan. He got oranges from Mexico, and he built an orange processing boat, basically. So he had all these ideas, explained them to somebody, and they built this barge so that it could process the oranges as it was in transit from Mexico to deliver it to all the different stops. So it would take the oranges, squeeze them, put them into bottles and everything, and then they would bottle and label it at his factory. One day he was watching them label the bottles, and he thought, we need to send this machine back. It's not very fast. I'm sure we could come up with something that would be faster to label the bottles. But his director said, "This is the best one on the market. This is as fast as it's going to get. We're not going to find anything better." But Anthony went home, and he prayed about it, and he asked God for some ideas. And the next morning, bright and early, he got a great idea of how they can make it work to put on the labels on their orange juice bottles even faster to be able to get their things ready to go. So he explained it to an engineer, and the engineer listened to all of his ideas, and he tried it out. And guess what? It worked, and they were able to get their oranges and their everything processed and labeled even faster. God just gave him so many great ideas, and Tony always wanted to use whatever God gave him to bless others. So he decided to build a missionary village. So in Florida, he built a whole area with over 200 apartments for people to come and live who had been missionaries in other countries and needed a place to live after their time on the field was over. So he built it so the people had a place to rest and to live there, and he and his wife moved there too once they got older. But he still was looking for ways to help other people, and eventually a company approached him and asked him about buying Tropicana. And he thought about it. He thought, if I give them a really high price, then probably they won't want to buy it. But he asked for $500 million, and the company bought it from him anyways. Guess it was the right price. And so Tony decided that must be what God wants me to do. He wants me to move on from that and keep looking for ways to invest in other people and help other people hear the good news of Jesus. He began thinking not everybody could read the Bible like he had been able to read the Bible and how he had learned about God. And he realized there are a lot of people who are blind, whose eyes don't work. And if they're blind, they can't read it the same. So he gave money to people to record the Bible as an audio Bible and to provide it free on cassettes for all these people who couldn't see so they could listen to the Bible. And those people were so thankful to have the Bible to listen to, and he realized this would also be really helpful for prisoners. So he did the same thing, had lots of cassettes made and then delivered to prisons so those prisoners could also hear the good news of the Bible. And guess what? Before long, there were people in other countries who wanted to hear the Bible in their language, and little by little, his ministry was spread all over the place, and God was able to use the things that he had learned in figuring out little problems and in running businesses to be able to bless many people for years to come. So that is the story of Anthony Rossi, who was the founder of Tropicana Orange Juice, which is kind of a cool story. I didn't realize that till I got most of the way through. He had a really creative ideas, and God used those to be a blessing to so many people.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
He wasn't your typical missionary, but he used the talents that God had given him in such a way that he could bless people and missionaries in neat ways.
Yeah.
So we need people like them too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Alyssa, could you tell us about the first person that we looked at a few weeks ago, and then we're going to review everyone else who we've been talking about in the last few weeks.
Yeah, we talked about my teammate, J.R. Dudek, who is a missionary in Peru. And he had the camp that they've been working on getting going, and they've had some good progress in getting their buildings up. I just saw pictures the other day of kids in his library program too. They got a bunch of Legos when he was here in the States, and so he had a big table out with Legos for the kids to play with, and I think they really enjoyed that. It looked like they were having a great time. So we can keep praying that God will provide the funds and the supplies and everything they need to keep going with building their camp, and that would be able to get up and get running.
Yep. And Andrew and Janae Gonerman in Japan, and you can pray for them that their church would keep finding ways to build relationships in their community and know how to deal with all the different COVID restrictions, because in Asia it's a little more strict than it is here. And so they are just figuring out what can we do as a church, what can't we do. They are glad that they can keep doing their language school, but that is still trickier than it was in the past. And so they just need wisdom as they figure out all these different things, and life is a little different. Trevor and Amelia Galbraith, who are on pre-field ministry, getting ready to go to Great Britain. They are at 38% of their support, about around there right now. They hope to be at 50% by the end of the year, so you can pray that God would use churches and individuals to help them get to that point. And then as they continue to go and visit churches around the country, that they would have good health and safety, especially as their van is starting to show its high mileage. So pray that that would continue to be a reliable vehicle for them.
And they're getting ready to do a survey trip here soon too.
Oh yeah.
So prayers for safety and that they'd get some good connections from that.
Yep, trying to figure out exactly where it is that God would place them for church planting in Great Britain. And then Riley and Kimberly Peak, who we looked at last week, our friends down in Tennessee, and prayer for them as they continue to seek God's guidance as He leads them along in life. And it's been a praise for them because God has been doing some great things, but they need that constant reminder that everything happens for a reason. And God is doing things in their lives, and each little step along the way is preparing them for something else in the future. So just remembering that and preparing for what God has for them next.
Yep. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you found our hidden item today. And you'll have to come back next time to hear a new story, learn about a new place around the world, and somebody else doing ministry.
Yep. Thanks again, and please share if you enjoy this, and we'll see you next time. Bye.